you.
Okay.
That would be great.
A very good morning. Thank you for having me again. I was here last year and had a good time. I'm with Axiata Group, the Group Chief Strategy and Technology Officer. So Axiata is a relatively diverse telco group, present with mobile operators in 6 markets, primarily Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Cambodia, Malaysia. We have a tower business, e.co, quite a sizable tower business in the region. And we have digital platform plays, a fintech business called Boost, and the edtech business, ADA. And we are also very much engaged in establishing platform businesses through our company called Axiata Digital Labs, which is building a suite of solutions to enable digital telcos, APIs, etc. So quite a diverse group. I'm overseeing strategy and technology for the group, and that's why I'm very excited to talk about redefining the telco and what needs to be done actually to make us relevant or maintain our relevance actually. I think we are relevant, extremely relevant in the connectivity domain, more than ever before, but I don't think that we are getting the best out of it, including for our investors and shareholders. So that's why I think there's a very important question here to be discussed, how we redefine our future.
Thank you, Thomas. I think you went a little bit beyond the elderly relative. But thank you very much. It's a great start on the topic.
All right, I'll do the elderly relative thing. So I'm Eugene. I'm currently doing business development and partnership in Telenor Asia. So Telenor Asia, we own, or at least we manage the assets, the telco assets that we have here in Asia. And one thing that's very exciting, I think recently we've seen the asset in Malaysia, DG, merged to basically Celcom, right? So now Axiata and us are partners in this like. We are exactly like what Thomas is saying, we are looking at a lot at basically moving beyond connectivity into, and how do we basically continue to grow the business in areas beyond connectivity. And also, like the telco itself, how do we think a bit about our transformation, whether you call it a techco transformation or telco tech transformation along those lines.
That's brilliant, Eugene.
Thank you. Hi, morning everyone. My name is Sing Kong. I think, Andrew, it's hard for me to talk like I'm talking to my elderly relatives because there are so many friends here. And I'm really glad to be here today. When I was listening to Gyok Chui, I was wondering when will we be attending an event like that with avatars sitting up here instead of human beings using different versions of ChatGPT talking among themselves. That would be horrendous, okay? So I'm from Singtel. I head up the B2B business, the enterprise business. Been there for 17 years, and every day is just so exciting, seeing how the telco industry evolve. I mean, the latest buzzword may be techco. Personally, I actually prefer platform, but as I think about the future, I think, the way we can transform and who we will be, in 5-10 years down the road, it's just so breathtaking. It's just so exciting. I really wonder whether we will still look like a telco, in 10 years time. Things are, developing so fast. So, great to be here today to be discussing about our future. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sing Kong.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Medad Ekbatani. I'm part of the Amdocs technology team. How do I explain that to my elderly relatives? Well, we help our business partners, we help our customers deal with the complexity of rolling new capabilities, how we move the communication forward. I'm very excited to be here. I seem to be following FutureNet around the world. And today is Singapore.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Well, thank you all so much. Sing Kong, I wasn't meaning to be offensive when I said that. I just like to try and take the most stupid person in the room along with you, and that's me, in my opinion. That's my job, to help bridge that to the audience. So I hope you'll excuse that.
Don't worry about it.
I'm going to share one more slide with you because I asked one other question about new business models. I have to say this made me laugh a little bit, actually. So I asked about the same question. I split them out into the individual business models. We talked about what things might we ask about as groups and categories. So we talked about open APIs and platform models, private networks, network as a service, horizontal solutions and vertical solutions. And as you can see, the averages of the answers were incredibly close together. There was really not very much in it at all. You know, part of the point of doing research is you don't know what you're going to find, and I didn't know I was going to find that. But it was quite an interesting finding. And one of the things I'd like to ask the panel about is their views on it. But I'll kick it off and say, my looking at the way people answered the questions, it wasn't like everybody said the same numbers. People did have spreads of answers. It just happened to work out like this. And I think there's a couple of reasons just in the research itself. One is we're asking a large range of people and they're thinking about different companies. So you're going to get a mix of things and it tends to average out a little bit. I think that's one thing. I personally think the answer to this question is quite uncertain. I think it's quite a hard question to answer. When will new business models, you know, materialize? It's a hard question to answer. And my instinct, but I don't know if this is true, and this is part of what I'd like to explore, is it's because we don't know, but not all the requirements are totally clear yet. It's part of my instinct about it, having worked on it for the last 15 years with my colleagues at SEL Partners. But that's just a little bit of trying to cut out the noise from this conversation, as in what might have gone in the survey process and in the questioning process. But if I can just turn to the panel, you know, I wanted to use this as a means to introduce the subject and say these are the kinds of business models we're talking about. They're not all of them, but there are some kinds. When I shared these slides with you guys last night, I mean, you haven't had a lot of chance to think about it. But what's your reaction to seeing that everybody thinks, you know, they're pretty much in the same place, about 3 years out, broadly is what it's saying. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's the reality that we have still a lot of work to carry out to actually get there. I agree that not everything is defined, and everybody is trying to pivot and to explore. But when it comes to network automation, let's say, I think primarily at the end of the day, everybody is still at the basic level. I mean, some are saying I'm more advanced than here and there, but at the end, I think we are all using more or less the same tech stack, and there is a lot of work still to be done to build on. So that's why at the end, starting with the data layer, starting with making sure that you have the basics in place, and then you build on top. Is it relevant? Absolutely, and not just from earlier you showed operational excellence perspective, which from an Axiata standpoint is very important because we're operating primarily in markets where every cent matters, and cost efficiency is super important for us. The production cost at the end of the day is one of the key metrics. But I believe as well that it's an enabler of future business. Complexity is growing. We need to...
Thank you. Jump in.
Yeah, maybe I think it's a bit defining of us as a telco, right? I mean, when we think of something, kind of think of it 3 years in advance. I think as we evolve more to whether you call it TechCo or telco tech, I think we need to be a lot more comfortable in putting things out here and now. So actually, I was surprised that most of the things are aggregating around the 3-year time frame. I would argue actually that network automation, to a certain extent, is already here now. I mean, for example, in Telenor, I think we are working with TM Forum, and I think we are putting together basically an automation initiative where you look into energy sustainability. You turn on and off the radio and the networks that we have, depending on prediction on whether or not there will be usage there. So you basically balance the customer experience with the energy efficiency. It is already there. So we don't have to wait 3 years down the road before this network automation use case is basically, is being implemented. I would also argue the new business model, what you define as vertical solutions, maybe we don't have the most advanced healthcare solutions out there, but a lot of the vertical solutions are already out there. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was attending the Maritime Conference together with the shipping and the port companies. And a lot of us, I think, and I believe Singtel as well, you're probably working with the ports, helping them in their digitalization journey. So again, I think, like these solutions, telco bringing beyond connectivity solutions into the market in specific verticals are probably already out today.
I love hearing that you were at a maritime conference because it picks up Gilchi's point about the customer. I've felt for years that telcos should be more engaged with other industries. So that's fantastic. Senkong, Medad, what would you like to say about this? You know, the grouping together and maybe the uncertainty a little bit.
Well, maybe I will give a curveball to that.
Yeah, go.
I think 3 years is not a surprise, because every time when I'm asked to talk about the future or forecast my numbers, you know, it kind of stops at the 3-year mark. I don't think it's realistic to see beyond 3 years, you know, but if you talk about just 3 months, you know, it's too short term. So maybe it's not such a coincidence after all. I guess for me, the question is this, right? I mean, the new business model. I mean, the question is, what is the new business model?
Right.
I think for as long as I can remember, things are moving so fast in the market. There are so many ways of looking at things. Things are so dynamic, new technologies and all that. I would argue that that business model is evolving, you know, almost daily. And it's not a case where, we got that, that's the new model. In fact, it's a function of daily evolution, how we change and all that. So I kind of agree with Eugene. You know, I don't think it's a case of business model, you know, will materialize in 3 years. You know, I think every day we are evolving, and I agree with you. I think it's kind of already here, but it's kind of not here because it will continue to change. Yeah.
I like that, the 3-year event horizon. I must admit, I've always thought that 3 years is just far enough ahead to think it's still the future and have some clarity about. 5 years is like, well, I have no idea what's happening in 5 years, but it's a great point. Medad.
Your finding is quite consistent with what we have found. Not necessarily the timing, because as you said, the automation is already there.
Yeah.
Whether that automation can handle the next complexities coming along, that's a different matter. But we found that the conversation tends to be around 4 types of transformation kind of pillars around data exploitation, cloud and programmability, network automation, and exposure. So we found that most of our conversations with our customers tend to be around those 4 pillars. But with the exposure, we're talking about like GSMA gateway and API exposure and automation, as we are talking about. And so we are building on top of, for example, with the data exploitation, what data is available in the network and how can we utilize it, and so on and so forth, and how can we build on top of that? So it's very much consistent to the survey that you have found as well.
Those are more kind of capabilities, though, you know, generic sort of capabilities being used to generate.
That's right, yeah.
So what are they again? Can you just repeat them again?
Data exploitation.
Yeah.
Cloudification and programmability, automation, and exposure.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then we're building the opportunities of the future on top of these kind of network transformation that needs to happen to be able to deliver this beyond connectivity. Absolutely. And I will talk later on a little bit about network as a service and things like that.
Well, that's what I want to bring you on to now. So what I wanted to, the sort of flow I want to get to, because we've had a good introduction now, is I wanted to talk about what the opportunities, what are the business models that we're excited about. And I think it's great context to say there's not one, there's lots, and it's evolving. But I want to try and get to some specific. And then I want to talk about the challenges, the lessons, and the actions. So that's the flow we want to go through. So I'm going to chuck it open to the group again. What are the I'm going to make it a little bit more quick fire now. Who's going to be the quickest on the draw? What are the opportunities you're most excited about? Who'd like to go first?
I can carry on. So, for example, last month we were in Copenhagen with Digital Transformation World. And in there we discussed a lot of things around what TM Forum is doing with their Catalyst program. Things like network exposure. And we were working with a lot of with AT&T, Orange, Telefonica, about the APIs that were already mentioned. All those APIs through camera, for example. How do we deliver the quality of service on demand? How do we deliver the location services? And we've been working with this consortium, and one of the catalysts called Shine, which is, now I have to remember that, simple, hyperscaler, integrated services experience. That's where it shows how the APIs can be exposed to developers. How will hyperscalers be able to deliver that through their portals? How would the service providers benefit by having their APIs exposed? And how would developers use those APIs to deliver services? So those are the business models that we are talking about in the future, where it will be simple and it will be a digital native way of accessing these services.
Okay, so I mean that's quite early days though. Early days exposure. It's not yet, if you like, a specific proposition. So it's sort of starting to move there. It's starting to move beyond generic capabilities into something more specific. Any other examples you'd like to throw out?
Well, I mean, I think the API conversation is on, right?
Yeah.
And from an Axiata standpoint, we are very much engaged in it, building open gateway, GSMA open gateway, compliant API gateways. That's one of our future belief of giving us a good add-on to the connectivity business. So we are building API gateways in our markets. And I mean, what I heard earlier about ecosystem, that I think is a very important component here. We need to step away from the ego, because at the end of the day, in every of the markets, only if an API is fully available across the operator domain, then the partner ecosystem can actually tap into it. So we are building these API gateways, exposing APIs, and we are very upbeat about it. That's done through the AxoNet suite, which we are having in Axiata. Yeah, we have East-West Federation eventually, which then brings everybody together. But exposing these APIs, some examples were mentioned just now, which, yeah, they are the relevant ones, and many more to come. That should unlock a good revenue stream and a business stream, monetizing obviously what the operators have as capabilities, the assets we have, right?
I have a slightly different perspective on this actually.
Great.
I think basically, like what is important actually for us as a telco, I'm extremely excited about the beginning of the shift in mindset. I think telco traditionally has been a product company. So I put a product out into the market, and then I become an expert in pricing the product, and then I make sure that I define 5 or 6 segments, and I get maximum value from these segments, in order to be able to continue to invest in the product. But I think more and more now, I see more telcos are thinking more like a solutions company. So I now have to basically, especially in the B2B space, I'm no longer just putting out my SIM cards, for companies. What I'm doing now is I need to understand the business of the organization so that I can provide a solution for you. So, and that will require us for us to really know the industry. So for example, I think just now we were talking about ports and maritime. Again, back to this example, right? It will require for us to really understand what are some of the key issues or hot button topics that is driving the port industry. After a while, you find that it's not very different. I mean, telco, we are talking about ESG, right? The maritime, they are talking about ESG as well. So telco, we are talking about basically, using data, using data and connectivity and IoT in order to do that better. And similarly, I think in maritime, ports and ships here, they're also talking about the same thing. So now the question is, how do us, as a telco, bring a solution that makes sense basically, for my customer, who may be a port operator or maybe a ship, a vessel owner, right? And how do I basically speak their language, and how do I make sure that I'm integrated into their ecosystem or their environment? Am I able to work with the system integrator so that the connectivity that I'm providing is actually helping them to do the digitalization? Often, I think the solution often is not very complex. So I mean, for example, I have one example where we built a strong relationship after putting connectivity and IoT in the port by really just helping the customer make sure that the image, at the berth, where the ship comes to the port, right, is properly captured so that at the operations center they can do verification of the containers that is going in and out of the port, right? And for that, actually, they saved a lot of manpower. They don't have the people sitting there verifying the containers. All these people now can be at the operations center, so there's a safety thing. One person can do the job of previously 3 people, so that's the efficiency part. But these are very simple solutions, right? But I think they just need the right reliability. They need basically, the right proposition of the technology being used in their business. And I'm excited by the fact that I think telco is more and more able to participate in this value chain. And I'm sure, I think Singtel, you probably have a lot more examples of this because we're learning a lot from you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. You know, it's always good in a panel like this to be the last to go, because I can always say that I agree with all of the above and in summary, you know. But jokes aside, okay, I really like what Thomas said about API and also what Eugene said about, you know, solution. And I think what I have to add is I think at the end, at the center of all of this is actually the platform. You know, when I was Gyokchue, I am paying attention. I told you I'm listening to you. Okay, when I saw that slide about Microsoft, you know, calling themselves, you know, as a platform company, I really like that because, you know, telcos have gone through all kinds of things, right? At some point in time, we are called a dumb pipe, right? At some point in time, we are said to be, oh, you are cannibalized, you are irrelevant, you are a commodity, so on and so forth. Now, I think the implication of a platform, first of all, I mean, back to the API story, it actually allows us, and even the solution story, very nicely to embed our services into vertical solutions, into different use cases. I think that's number one. Number two is it allows us to create synergies, you know, among different solutions that we offer. And that is the aha moment, because for the longest time, Telco has been talking about, okay, let's expand into adjacencies. And then we realize, you know, whatever adjacencies we do, you know, there are people who are doing it. And to make it worse, you know, we're under a lot of pressure because the adjacencies we expand into, let's be frank, can never be as profitable as the network business. You know, I mean, we are not allowed to do drugs, we are not allowed to do weapons. Okay, so we couldn't find anything else that's more profitable than the network business. So a lot of times we've been pressured by, you know, shareholders, board, and all that to say, yeah, you're expanding, but you're going into low margin business, you're da. But with platform, okay, that allows us to create that synergies among different adjacency. There you go. You know, we can differentiate. We become a lot more relevant, and it's not a case of expanding into adjacencies and running disparate lines of business. So really, I think to sum it all up, I think it's really the platform that is going to bind all of this and enable that to happen.
Thank you. I think that's a pretty cogent and answer that I don't think anyone on the panel is disagreeing with. Or does someone want to have a go?
No, I absolutely not disagree. I mean, I agree with we should portray ourselves into the minds of what our customers' industries and verticals are. But the beauty of a platform is that we expose capabilities and openness through the openness angle, that at the end of the day also the community, the developer community through marketplaces, etc., can pick up those capabilities and develop the solutions fitting then actually to those verticals in mind, right? So it's not that we as telcos have to design and build a solution now fitting exactly for every use case of our customers, but with the openness, everybody in a way can pick up and build the solutions, right? And that's, to me, the beauty of the platform, that we really can go wide, because there is no one killer application or one killer use case at the end of the day. There are so many which can all utilize the capabilities which we expose.
Is it a bit of, you know, I'll just play devil's advocate, because what I really liked about what Eugene was saying was, went to a maritime conference, understood the customer. Isn't there a bit of an abdication of responsibility if you go, oh, well, just put the platform out there, the customers can use it for what they want to? Don't you have to, how do you balance the understanding the customer and having a platform that performs at a horizontal level? How do you know, because I think we're starting to talk about a challenge here, because it's one of the things that I always think about is how do you get that balance right? You need to be at the conferences, but you also need to make it work for everyone, right? How do you do it?
No, I agree. I said we need to understand what the real demands on the customer front are. But I don't think that it is for a telco realistically feasible to cover the full breadth of what the customers, the segments actually desire and needs, because at the end of the day, we will never become an expert in their business, right? I mean, everybody has its expertise and its place. While engaging with the industries we are working with, and obviously it's not just B2B, it's also B2C, where the consumer space is large and a vital income source for us at the end of the day in the future. But if we really expose capabilities with understanding what the customer problems are, which we would like to solve for them, then it becomes in a way you build a use case, but it can be multiplied through then marketplaces, etc. Right? I don't think that a telco will cover the full breadth of all our customer verticals problems, right? They will have their own expertise, which we can't ever replicate.
But is it a challenge if you know in your role as a group CTO to get that customer insight? I mean, how do you go about doing that? That's one of the things I always think is interesting.
Major challenge, of course. I mean, attending conferences is one. Obviously, engaging every day with, focusing on B2B, that our B2B teams obviously engage every day with the customers and developing jointly use cases is another part, right? And we need to understand, okay, what are the core competencies, the core capabilities required, and to build those use cases. That's the conversation in that domain. But as I said, if you expose also the capabilities and do it via marketplaces, then there is the whole developer ecosystem, developer community out there, which can pick up the capabilities and build on their own, right? So that's not necessarily that telcos have to do everything for everyone.
Right. I quite agree with Thomas. I think, at the end of the day, the platform is important. The ability of the telco to understand the customer, so they're putting solution in front of the customer is important. I think just to give another example, I think as well, right? I think, so a lot of our customers, they probably understand edge cloud. They understand that you need CCTV and image visioning and solutions and all. But the problem sometimes is I think, like they're a little bit, they will worry a little bit about, do I go ahead and buy Amazon or do I buy basically Google? And if I get locked into this, every time an image is processing, how much will I end up paying them? And I think there is a role, at least based on my experience, like for telcos to play in order to bring together an ecosystem or kind of like to basically to orchestrate a solution. Then we have hyperscalers, then we have software companies that with a platform to bring to the customer. And I think for Telenor, I think, like what we define as important is I think as long as it is in our local market, the interface, the direct interface to the customer, the one who owns the customer relationship, I think that's of utmost importance to us. Right? Like we have to be the one that brings the solution to the customer. Behind us, it could be system integrator, it could be software ISVs, it could be other technology providers and hardware, etc. But I think the person that is interfacing or that owns the customer relationship, who understands the pain point of the customers, so that to bring the solution to bear, I think that is the important part, or that's I think the challenge in the equation.
Senkong, how do you do that in Singtel? How do you get the right people? How do you get that good person, if you like, or people at the pain point?
We never have enough of good people, for sure. Okay, but I think back to what is said earlier. I think it's very interesting. I mean, this thing about getting the right solutions, knowing industry, be all things to all people. I kind of see it slightly differently. For me, for Singtel, we are very, very focused on delivering the right component. I mean, for example, we talked about APIs just now. So deliver the right API, have the right APIs, okay? I mean, of course, we have to understand certain industry and all that. But by and large, the telco industry, what we provide is a horizontal layer and is very applicable to almost all industries, And the use cases, I rather think of the crowdsource kind of a concept where you have the right things you put out in the marketplace. People will come and you can jointly create ideas. I mean, after all these years, I never cease to be amazed by somebody looking at our things and say, hey, I want to use it in a particular way, in a different way. What do you think of that? Can we have the right APIs, right orchestration, so on and so forth? So I tend to think that right, solution and all that, it will evolve. So the key thing is put it out there, have the focus on the right components, and I think ideas will grow and evolve. Yeah.
Thank you. Great answer. I'm going to move us on slightly, and Medha, I'd like to bring you in here. The two last bits I wanted to talk about were the lessons and the actions. So, we've already kind of put in context that there's still a way to go.
Yeah.
And things are, so we're kind of maybe a bit beyond early stage, but we've got some of the building blocks in place. We've got some things starting to work. Yeah. What would you say are the key lessons from what you've seen?
Okay, so if I just talk a little bit about the basic challenges with beyond connectivity, and what we see with our customers is that we are delivering the basic ingredients, for example, with 5G and whatever, to enable our customers to go beyond connectivity. And with that comes certain challenges. So when we start looking at the complexity that we are introducing with these new technologies, the challenges is that the network automation solutions that we are proposing, they might be new, but there are existing network automation solutions in the network already. So if you had a greenfield scenario, then the complexity is still quite high, but it will be a little bit simpler. But these network automation solutions that we are suggesting right now has to coexist with the existing solutions for the design, delivery, implementation and activation of the existing services. And then there are services in the network, such as early 5G network slicing that was done in the US, that was designed by the old network automation tools. So then we are introducing these new network automation tools that have to not only learn about the old services that exist in the network, but also be able to take over the lifecycle management of the existing services. So then we need a solution where it learns about what services already exist in the network and how can they take these over.
Okay. Gentlemen, what would you like to add? I mean, we're thinking of challenges and lessons here. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned?
One of the key lessons, I believe, is that from the past as well, we need to maintain this openness. We need to be, in a way, converging all our assets and abilities in markets, in regions. Otherwise, again, we get fragmentized, right? One to many, in a way, we have capabilities. There are many customers out there, many use cases out there. Only if we, at the end of the day, strongly collaborate, and in some markets we are competing with each other, in some markets we are partner with each other. But if the ecosystem is coming together and really sharing the same capabilities, and that the GSMA Open Gateway, also the Camara initiatives are exactly doing the right things in this domain, that you really build commonalities which then one to many can be exposed, right? Because I don't think, as I said, the sheer magnitude of possibilities can be addressed by us telcos alone, right? We need to give it to the ecosystem to work on. And this openness, but partnership and collaboration approach is very critical. I see some good momentum, but more probably needed, including when it comes to future network investments which we need to undertake, which are massive at the end of the day, right? So that openness and collaborative approach is a lesson learned which we need to embrace a lot more.
Thank you, Thomas. I've got my eye very firmly on the clock. We've got 3 minutes.
I know you do.
See if you can capture your key learnings in a minute each. So,
I can go first. I think one lesson learned is I believe you cannot be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think you probably have to choose some areas where you want to be the best. So for example, I'll say, if I'm Telenor wants to be the best, in terms of basically a partner, a solution partner for the port, for example. We want to be the best partner, I guess, now with the assets that we have for military installations, for example, in the markets that we have. We want to be the best solution partner, basically, for oil and gas platforms, whether it's offshore or onshore. And I think once you decide that, the areas that you want to be, I would argue that the lesson learned then is maybe take some risk, right? And I think, Kong Sing, just now you're referring to the 2 biggest problems for most telcos. Number one, the ROI. You want to go into this project, is the ROI above 30%? If not, why don't I sell more SIM cards, right? And the second one, I will argue sometimes is also the risk appetite, right? I remember in the case where we said, telco today, we committed to the regulator in some countries, 90% SLA availability. But when we go to the customer wants 99.7. So we're going to do that or not? Most people in telco will say, no, you cannot do that because the network is built for 90.0 now and 99.0 now and 99.7 3 years down the road. So I think, but once we say that, look, there are some areas where, if you mitigate it properly, you can take some of this risk, whether it's ROI or SLA related. You go in, you understand the business, you build the business, and then I think, you will see, I think the future a little bit more for us as a solution provider for
Thank
some
you.
of the business.
Senkong, Medad, you can see the clock?
Yep. Simple. One word, okay? A lot have been spoken about, looking outwards, ecosystem and all that. I tend to think that the most important lesson learned, one word, talents. Okay, what kind of workforce do you have? What kind of talents do you have? What kind of skills do you have? And are we thinking enough about being, diverse enough? Okay, so very simple. That's the lesson I learned. Yep.
Well, what we've seen is that there is a network, there's a strategy, there's a vision how the network should evolve. And what we've learned is that that needs to be communicated, that needs to be well communicated so that the operations staff are on board, so that they don't see like new network automation tools as an overhead when they've already got tools and things. So that communication, that bringing the whole team on board, all pulling in the same direction is also very important.
Fantastic. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you so much. 12 seconds. Fantastic. Will you join me in giving them a huge round of applause? They're a great panel. Thank you very much.